Welcome back. You're now watching the political segment on The Weekend Show. My name is Andy Madaki.
My name is Lami Akujere. I'm happy to be back here.
How
As a
have you
co-host again,
been?
I've been good.
Good. So, co-host, how is Nigeria treating you?
Well, life is lifing. I'm currently battling a fever, but I mean, we
You
have to
know
keep.
what? I noticed people have been having cold and a bit of fever
I don't want to
lately.
follow the conspiracy theories, but I
To
think
say COVID is
something.
back.
but I think something is definitely in the
Yeah,
air. I have
people
to say,
do
it's a
need
lot of
to
people,
stay safe.
and to get checked as well.
Yes,
Yes.
the current administration spent 1 year in office. We have had different opinions of people from different places speaking, but something which has stood out is the National Assembly. And the National Assembly is meant to be one of the arms of government that acts as a watchdog when it comes to the executive and the judiciary, thanks to separation of powers. But the question is, are we getting what we want from them? Or, like some people will say, are they being rubber stamped? Or are they just doing the bidding of the executive? What's your, before we introduce our guests, what's your take on how active of a role the National Assembly is playing or should play?
So I was saying yesterday how the only time we have seen this 10th Assembly as active and very vocal has been when they have been talks about brewing protests of recent. And I wish that there was as much check and balance as they should be doing. But like Atiku said, I don't want to use the word that he said, they have been more of supporting the executive as opposed to supporting the people that have elected them into office. But that's another conversation that we're about to have with our guest today on the
Talking
show.
about our guests, we have Honorable Clement Jimbo, who is representing Abak Etim Ekpo Ika constituency in the 10th Assembly. Honorable, good morning and welcome to the Weekend Show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. You're one of the people who have constantly spoken about youth accountability when it comes to Nigeria. Now, you are now accountable to your people, your constituents. How has this been so far in the 10th Assembly?
Well, thank you very much. Before I delve into making an attempt to respond to your question, let me clear some gray areas as postulated by the co-host, that it is only in recent time that the National Assembly has really been vocal. We have always been vocal, especially the 10th House of Representatives. You see, it is responsible leadership that looks into the pulse of the nation and monitor it closely with a view to tinker with the policies of government and that of the legislators to see how to solve problems. So the one that has really come to the fore that she mentioned is the planned protests, and the National Assembly, especially the House of Representatives, had to immediately swing into action to see how to talk to Nigerians, for them to see that indeed we are representing them. They elected us to represent them. And in critical times like this, all hands must and should be on decks to see to it that things move smoothly and normally. Then coming back to youth rendering account to the people that elected them, Clement Jimbo has been elected to represent the people. By the grace of God, apart from the general laws that we make that that affects the entire Nigerians and even beyond Nigeria, I have in my enclave over 500,000 human beings that I am directly responsible to. So in my capacity as a lawmaker, so far in the last 1 year, I have been able to live up to the biddings of what I promised them during the electioneering campaign, which was effective representation, responsible leadership, and shared prosperity. So we have lived through all these promises, and we are still prepared to make sure we give them this representation.
But on that note, given that you claim to be, conversant with your people, are you also hearing and listening to some of the complaints? For instance, how people cannot buy tomato and how they're having to resort to blending cucumber to replace tomato, how they cannot buy rice like they used to buy rice. Like, do you hear these complaints? And if you do, what have you, as a member of the House of Representatives, what have you done to mitigate some of this, or at least, you know, in some of your caucus meetings, what have you been doing to mitigate some of the sufferings that your people clearly have been clamoring about and against? On every other morning in the FCT, if you listen to, you know, the likes of Human Rights Radio, there's people crying and saying, this is not what we bargained for. We need more people to speak up for us. We need people to listen to us. What have you done in that regard?
Thank you very much for that intelligent question. First, we need to understand that a lawmaker is elected to make laws, and we have been very strong in that respect. The executive is there to implement the laws that we make, and the judiciary interprets the law that we make. The question is, have we made enough laws that the executive can leverage on to ameliorate the sufferings of the people? The obvious answer is yes. When we were inaugurated on the 13th of June, 2023, the first critical assignment that the executive presented to us was the 2023 supplementary appropriation. It didn't take us 48 hours to pass that into law, to give the executive the ample resources to begin to churn out the promises that they made to the people. That is number one. Then recently we passed, I moved a motion of urgent public importance on the need for Nigeria to go into mechanized farming. We are known in Nigeria politically, divided Nigeria into 6 geopolitical zones. That informed me why when it comes into election year, every nook and crannies of Nigeria is bombarded with politics. Everybody's conscious. But can we also divide Nigeria into 6 geo-agricultural zones, and we go into serious mechanized farming? Before the advent of oil, what was sustaining Nigeria? It was agriculture. Are we doing that much as we did years back? The obvious answer is no. So we must intentionally and deliberately get back to the land and farm. The food insufficiency we are talking about is exacerbated by lack of many Nigerians, or Nigeria as a whole, consciously and deliberately going into mechanized farming. It is not all this mushroom farming in your corner of the room that will solve the problem. Nigeria needs to earmark massive hectares of land in their thousands and cultivate crops that are predominantly, that can do fairly well without much improvement on soil. Like in the South-South, what is predominantly doing well in the South-South? In the Southwest, in the Southeast, in the North-Central, what can we grow that can do predominantly well? Let us cultivate that land, and food will be abundant. It is not a rocket science. Yes, the prices of things are high. There is nobody that is not aware of that. I live in Nigeria. I listen to the pulse of the nation. In fact, that was what exacerbated the last motion in the House of urgent public importance that was raised by Right Honorable Ibrahim Isiaka. And the Deputy Speaker had to buttress that point and suggested to the Parliament that let us equally show great empathy by slashing our salaries by 50%, and that translates into over $500 million of naira to our constituents. Somebody may say that is not
Absolutely
significant.
No, because we know
but
that your allowances are more than your salary.
Let me tell you what 2,000 naira can do to somebody that is in dire need. Recently, about a week ago, I traveled to my constituency. I branched into a filling station to fuel my car, and the people tripping to show solidarity with me, to praise me with what we have been doing. And I told the pump attendant, please pump 3 liters of fuel to every bike man that is there. And that translated into serious amount of money. That 3 liters of fuel has gone deep way down to solve so many critical problems in the society. Somebody may say, is it not 3 liters of fuel? But times the 3 liters of fuel to over 1,000 bikes, you will know what
Honorable,
it means.
let me interject. We've had the Humanitarian Affairs Minister suspended because of some allegations. We also saw the Committee on Women Affairs having a session with the Minister of Women Affairs. However, we've also in the news seen that the Ministry of, I think, Industries has allocated billions of money and given billions of monies to Nigeria. Has anyone from your constituency reached out to you saying they've benefited from any of these fundings from the Humanitarian Ministry, Women Affairs, or industries? You are a representative, because now you paying 3 liters of oil for people, that's from your pocket, that's from your allowances. But money, and you stated that the assembly was quick to approve appropriation to ensure there's a free flow. You are a representative. Is there anyone, because I don't know anyone personally who has gotten any of this funding from the Ministry of Industries, the Women Affairs, or Humanitarian Affairs? But we always see that 50 million people have gotten this, 25 million people, 2.5 million have gotten money in billions. Do you have any feedback from anybody in your constituency who has come to you say, we have gotten this? And if no, what are you doing about that?
No, it's not no. I have gotten some feedbacks. I recall vividly SMIDAN,
yes,
Small and Medium Scale Enterprises, whatever, of Nigeria. They reach out to members. The committee of the House, the chairman reached out to members and said, look, make available 50 people, 100 people, 150 people from your constituents with the different details that they required. I supplied that. And when I got back, some of them called me, look, I have gotten an alert of 50K. I said, okay, it's from that name I collected from you. So there are many like that. And also not forget, there are people that benefit from this thing, but they will keep their mouth shut. Yes. Of course, the humanitarian ministry you talked about, it is under investigation. I recall when we came in, about almost all the members of the House were asked to submit at least 1,000 names from their constituents. And we did, until the unfortunate happened where the minister was suspended and the entire thing is under investigation. So until that is done, I wouldn't expect anyone to still dabble into that. Let the, maybe from the security angle, come out clean and let people be prosecuted. Then the new minister will be brought into the saddle to begin the entire process.
But it's been over 5 months, and even for you yourself and for me, electricity tariffs have gone up, fuel prices have gone up, inflation is at an all-time high. Holding the executive arm accountable with this long duration. And I'll say this because we've had the history, and maybe more in the Senate. One, Senator Ningi brought up conversations about the appropriation bill, and he got suspended. Senator Undume, yes, Senator Undume has been complaining about the state of the economy, and he's just been dropped as the chief.
He has not exhausted the internal mechanism of litigation, of solving problems. And that is the same message I sent to, I was in your sister agency yesterday in the evening. And I said, look, those that are planning protests, have they exhausted all the mechanism of solving problems?
Like what,
I offered them, look, if you want to have a sit down with the Speaker of the 10th House of Representatives, please get my number and call me. We are going to select that meeting so that you can table your whatever grievances and for it to be a solution. Okay, look at the organized labor. If they have said they are not going to have a sit down with the management of the affairs of Nigeria, will they have agreed on the minimum wage of 70,000 naira that they have agreed? There is no way you will make yourself available for leadership to see and your angle that solution would not be proffered. But sitting down aloof and maybe throwing your hands in fatalistic resignation and just thinking on your own without the other person hearing what you are thinking, it's counterproductive.
But isn't the job of the National Assembly to speak for the people, especially as
we have been speaking?
But why has somebody been suspended for doing what the average Nigerian is
when
doing?
You are wrong. Let me make an example of Ningi. The budget, the 2024 Appropriation Act that is currently running, do not forget, the budget of CBN was not part of that. The budget of NDDC has just been passed this week. It was not part of that. The budget of National Assembly was not part of that. So this man was ill-informed and he went to the public for crying out loud. We have appropriation committee of the House. Why didn't you table your concern? We must not always watch our dirty linen outside. Exhaust the internal mechanism. This is AIT. If there are frictions here and there, you don't go to social media to castigate the entire agency of AIT that has been doing so much. You exhaust your internal mechanism to solve problems before going to the public.
Honorable, it's also good to be transparent. An average Nigerian can't go to the 3-arm zone and enter the National Assembly. You either need to have an appointment or you need to have someone to get you in. So when you talk about people, not everybody, even when you say 1,000 names, even if it's from everybody, it's not up to 1 million people. Do you understand? When we talk about the masses, for Ndume to speak, so you've spoken about Ningi, but also in the House of Reps, recently a representative had complained that the deputy speaker wasn't giving new legislators the equal chance to speak when it comes to airing their views, that older representatives are given priority. So we have internally, like you said, we have members of the House of Reps complaining. In the Senate, we have them complaining. But the bigger problem is you see social media. You are a representative, so you get people attacking on a daily basis, I'm very sure. The voice of the people plays a major role. Those who have access to some of you is very few. Speaking objectively, how can they come and use internal mechanisms when they don't even have the access?
That is why we have 360 federal constituencies in Nigeria. And every Nigerian belongs to one of these federal constituencies. And each of these federal constituencies is represented by a lawmaker. So what effort have you made to reaching your lawmaker? My own reach me. They reach me on daily basis. In fact, if you come to my office in the last one here, those that have filled the form to have access to me to table one issue or the other, they are in thousands. I make out time to listen to them because I was elected to represent them. Yes, it might not be the same with every lawmaker. And that is where leadership recruitment process need to be checked and rechecked and fine-tuned to know who you send to represent you. They elected these people to represent them. Hold them accountable. I challenge many Nigerians. I say, look, the 2024 Appropriation Act is currently ongoing. Have you ever downloaded the public document, the budget of Nigeria, to know the projects that are domiciled in your constituency, in your local government? Have you made effort to reach out to the ministry, the department, the agency that are saddled with the responsibility of implementing this budget? Do you even care? That is how to hold government to account. It's not sitting down and complaining. The budget is there. The projects are there. Have you reached out to the minister? Have you written to the agency? Have you reached out to your lawmaker and said, look, this thing has been earmarked for my community. How and when are they going to be implemented? That is how I think Nigerians should hold lawmakers, the executive, to account.
Thank you. But on that note, I would like to ask, are there any plans of the House of Reps to maybe, because we've had in the past, I think it was in the 8th or 7th Assembly, where they summoned the president, the National Assembly summoned the president, sitting president at the time, to come and give account, and, come and speak to them and come and answer questions, which is, fair, because you're supposed to check the executive as well. Is there any plans to do that for the current president? Because at this point, I think that it's necessary for there to be that check, for there to be that.
No, if there is need, we have the powers in the Constitution to summon anybody, not just Mr. President.
But why hasn't that been done? Because
when there is need.
You really think that at this point?
No, when there is need. Let me tell you something.
For that?
The Speaker of the 10th House of Representatives, Dr. Tajuddin Abbas, has unfettered access to the President to discuss issues. The President of the Senate, Chief Gospel Obodokpabio, has unfettered access to discuss issues with Mr. President. So when these people have access and they discuss issues, do you think it is still needful that the Parliament will now still summon the President to address issues that is currently being addressed at that level?
That's 3 people out of how many members?
No, not 3 people. That is how you look at it. The Senate President is the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The House of the Speaker of the 10th House of Representatives represents the entire Nigeria and beyond. So when these people speak, they are not just speaking as one person. They speak based on the interest of the National Assembly and the entire Nigerians. Just like as I'm speaking down, as I'm speaking here, I'm not just speaking for Clement, Jimbo, and my constituency. I'm speaking for the entire Nigerians. So don't see me as just one person. Don't see the Speaker as just one person or the Senate President as just one person. They are more than one person.
As a Nigerian, I have to say that you live in a bubble as a member of the House of Reps. The Senate President definitely lives in a bubble.
I disagree with you completely and totally.
You have to agree with me.
Okay,
Honorable, you can call your constituents.
I'll let you speak, but I'll just ask you the final question because of time and also so that you can address your constituents and Nigerians. On a scale of 1 to 100, how will you rate the last 1 year in office of the president and his ministers? Are you happy with the state of things in the Nigerian economy at the moment? As a representative and as a person, if you have to rate it, on a
Scale of 1 to 100.
yes.
100 being the highest and
Yes.
0. Let me say this. I'm going to quote someone that I've read his book so much. It's Lee Kuan Yew. He wrote the book From Third World to First. Was a famous leader in Singapore. He said in this book, we cannot afford to forget that public order, personal security, economic prosperity and growth are not the natural order of things. They depend on ceaseless effort and attention from an effective and honest government that the people must elect. End of quote. Now, Albert Cadmius said something in his book titled The Rebel, that it is better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. End of quote. Coming back to your question. Every nation of the earth that we sit down in Nigeria and admired were built by human beings. And what they use in building those nations is patriotism. And patriotism is what we need more in Nigeria. I was heartbroken when I listened to graduates of medical colleges across Nigeria. Their opinion was sample. And over half of them said they are eager to leave Nigeria to go and practice medicine elsewhere. And I asked myself, why didn't you go to that country that you want to go and practice and study the medicine? A country that has given you knowledge, platforms, and impacted into you skills. After you have acquired all this, what you can give back to that nation is to go elsewhere to practice what Nigeria has given to you. That is the highest level of unpatriotism. And Nigeria needs to change from this act of unpatriotism. We must roll our sleeves and build a nation, if not for ourselves, but for the nearest future. And that is what the current administration is doing. And if you ask me the question, the current president, and indeed his cabinet, not all though, are doing practically everything within their powers to see to it that Nigeria is reckoned among Committee of Nations.
On the scale of 1 to 100, what grade would you give them?
I'll give this administration 68%.
Thank you very much, Honorable. We'll invite you next week or the week after to continue this conversation. It's important that you continue to speak up for your people, and I do commend you for raising the motion which you raised in the House. However, like Lami has said, besides Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Kano, sometimes we're in a bubble in our comfort zone. And so when we have this conversation, it's for the masses and the people. Absolutely. But this is just part one of this conversation. We'll bring you back to continue the conversation and more. Thank you for honoring us with your time and presence.
I appreciate it.
That's the much we can take on the political segment of the weekend show. We will be transitioning shortly to Abraham for the gist in sports.